In addition to just sort of the ethos about using reputation as the rewards mechanism, there really is a technical benefit here, which is um, how would I put this? Um, yes, obviously, like with proof of stake, you could just have one node basically act as a database because it has so much of a stake, it can just say whatever the fuck it wants. Um, that's sort of the, I guess we were going to talk about the choose two from three kind of cap theorem thing from this triumvirate, was it?
Trilemma.
Trilemma. I like triumvirate, man. That reminds me of like American history or some shit. Anyway, so yes. So the whole point here is that we want to figure out some way that the network can actually take into account empirical facts such that the network can sort of like self-heal or capitulate or adapt to changes in its environment or its system. The goal here is to create adaptability. The same way something that, I mean, if you look at the cohomology paper, you look, I forget the guy's name right now, but there's some really cool, I'm not going to get into it, but basically we want to figure out how to create some kind of latent consciousness amongst our nodes so that they're aware of each other and can create some kind of like how do I put this, like a meta behavior in order to, react to, kind of a problem. That's sort of that is what will happen due to, in a Sybil attack case, if there is at least one node that did not perform in the Sybil attack. So that's why we needed to do that. And the answer is, was there something else I was going to answer about that too?
No, I think that was good, and okay. I think going from the consensus.
Oh wait, really quickly, can I just tie on that too? So the reputation itself doesn't necessarily tie into consensus, and I'm actually really excited to sort of describe sort of how this whole thing fits. What's happening with reputation is that we constantly gather information we call observations about the performance of each node. And then these observations are then proposed the same way that a transaction would be proposed in consensus, right? So somebody the other node can just notarize it, or they can also say, hey, I saw this, as well, and that'll merge together and, basically say, hey, this node timed out on a request. So it might mean that they're having some kind of like network issues, and if that's the case, and we start seeing a bunch of those, then we want to kick those off because they're holding the cluster behind. So it's basically a way of, it's sort of like a cooperative game that replaces proof of work where the work is useful. And so I'm really excited to, I've been looking at some game theory stuff around cooperative games and concurrency. So I think there's going to be some fun stuff to tie in there. So stay tuned. That's where I'm looking at. But also one last part, consensus is actually, consensus is where dynamic partitioning happens. So at any given moment, all nodes have a mempool of transactions, which are raw data, and then blocks, which form this graph, this referential, knowledge graph of information that we can then, use with some, probabilistic, acceptance of fact. Basically, what we do is we sort of pseudo-randomly select, those facilitators, we call them. And then nodes take data and then propose it. So nodes first filter out bogus data and then they propose stuff. So basically what happens is that after all these processes happen at once, like if there is something like a double spend or whatnot that occurs, then basically like as every single time a new transaction comes through, we'll be able to look through all of our blocks, obviously, and see if there's some kind of a conflict. But even if there was a Sybil attack with a double spend, we have a second process called this redownload. That's the thing we were working on, which incorporates the reputation model, and that's actually how we're able to identify and then fork the network. So in that second, we almost have like a global consensus and a local consensus, if that makes any sort of sense. And in that way, the network is concurrent, not really parallel, but it is, parts of it are parallel, obviously, but it is concurrent in the sense that we are limited by the main process of this redownload, but that orchestration allows us to implement that sort of self-healing nature from the reputation model.